The US funded highly dangerous coronavirus research that was once banned at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That research involved creating new deadly viruses that never existed before. Intelligence agencies are investigating whether such a virus may have leaked and resulted in a global pandemic. The person who knows more about this research than anyone is the top medical advisor to the president, Anthony Fauci. But when the outbreak of the pandemic exploded and the White House was sitting there wondering how it all started, Fauci did not once mention gain-of-function research or the other research activities at the Wuhan laboratory. It was left to others to slowly uncover. Gain-of-function research involves experiments that can increase transmissibility or the virulence of pathogens, of viruses. And that's what was going on in the Wuhan labs. It turns out that even when this worrying research was banned in the US back in 2014, US money was still continuing to flow through to China to fund the same research. And Fauci is the man responsible for this. He was the head of the NIH when the ban on this risky research was lifted in 2017.
You don't want to go to Hoboken, New Jersey, or to Fairfax, Virginia, to be studying the bat-human interface that might lead to an outbreak. So you go to China.
The NIH was also funding research being undertaken by Chinese military scientists. American taxpayer dollars were funding research to genetically manipulate coronaviruses with the People's Liberation Army. This particular project also involved the Wuhan Institute of Virology and two American institutions.
It's not just the Wuhan lab is still authorized for payouts right now. Right now, it's you look on the NIH's website, that PHS assurance is still there. There's 26 other labs in China that are authorized for payouts from the NIH.
So what's Fauci's excuse for why he sent money to do this research in China? Well, here's what he said in a little-known interview he did just a couple of days ago.
This is a sub-award from a larger grant that received one of the highest scores from American peer reviewers of research that needed to be done. So you say, why do it in China? You do it in China through a very well-known, highly qualified laboratory.
Well, let's hit pause there for a second. Is Fauci serious? A highly qualified laboratory? He needs a history lesson. Firstly, the lab was built with the French government and was meant to be a centre of international cooperation. But from the moment it opened, the French were immediately kicked out. They were furious, and French intelligence then warned that the lab could be used for bioweapon research and military purposes. And in 2015, Israeli bioweapons expert Danny Shoham did an in-depth analysis of China's research in the field of biological weapons. He specifically named the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It wasn't just the French and the Israelis who were concerned. The US government itself was aware of the extreme risks of this lab through cables sent back from American officials who visited the Wuhan Institute of Virology in 2017 and 2018. They were so concerned, they sent back 2 cables and they warned of the serious lack of trained technicians, the lack of funding, the biosafety concerns, and they also highlighted the type of dangerous coronavirus research that was going on. So, Fauci, you're wrong when you say this was a well-known, highly qualified laboratory. The opposite is true.
Now, you're absolutely correct that I can't guarantee everything that's going on in the Wuhan lab. We can't do that. But it is our obligation as scientists and public health individuals to study the animal-human interface.
No, Fauci. It is your obligation as a scientist and a public health official to protect our public health by doing coronavirus research in a laboratory where you can guarantee everything that's going on.
So it was incumbent upon us to study the animal-human interface and to understand what potential these viruses have of infecting humans, which then might damage the United States.
That phrase that you just heard Fauci say, the potential these viruses have to infect humans, that describes exactly the type of gain-of-function research where viruses are genetically altered to see if they can infect humans. And in doing this research, a new virus is created that does infect humans, that can infect humans, and could leak from a laboratory to cause a pandemic.
Please let me finish. So you don't want to go to Hoboken, New Jersey, or to Fairfax, Virginia, to be studying the bat-human interface that might lead to an outbreak. So you go to China.
Seriously, you go to China because you don't want to start an outbreak in America? Does this health official not understand how viruses can spread around the world? In China, in labs that are less safe, less secure, where the new deadly viruses can then be used for military purposes and bioweapons research, where military scientists had already advocated for the weaponization of coronaviruses. This is where America's top medical advisor to the president wanted to do the risky coronavirus research. It is unthinkable.
And our mission is to stop taxpayer-funded and wasteful government spending on animal experiments, such as at the Wuhan lab. We've been on this journey, like you, really since day one. We started our work and our investigations into Wuhan way back in January of 2020. But our contributions to exposing and investigating the pandemic's origins really weren't so much following the science to implicate a lab leak, but following the money. Following that money trail and then to find, expose, and to fund it. Our new lawsuit that we just filed against Fauci's NIH is part of this overall campaign. Last year, over Easter weekend of 2020, our organization, White Coat Waste Project, launched the very first investigation showing how the money trail worked, showing that indeed taxpayers via Fauci's NIH en route to the secretive, then little known EcoHealth Alliance were indeed funding the Wuhan lab. It was an investigation that really shocked the world, that potentially American taxpayers were paying for these experiments that may have indeed caused the pandemic. You can see in the new Fauci emails, they talk a little bit about our investigation back in April of 2020, when it all broke and got the White House's attention to cancel the active funding at the time. Well, since we launched that investigation, Sherry, we subsequently sent 2 Freedom of Information Act requests to the NIH to find out precisely what Fauci knew and when he knew it. We requested information like funding applications, email correspondence between Fauci and EcoHealth before and after the pandemic broke, email correspondence between Fauci and former CDC Director Redfield, who, as you know, is a prominent supporter, openly supporting the lab leak hypothesis. He's since received some death threats over that. Information about whether Fauci's payout to Wuhan and EcoHealth was properly reviewed by the NIH Oversight Committee. Fauci's emails all the way back to 2013 we requested. We want to see what NIH and EcoHealth knew about a lab leak, a potential lab leak in late 2019 and early 2020. Well, after we filed those Freedom of Information Act requests, Fauci's NIH blew the deadline set by federal law to give us what we were entitled to as taxpayers. They blew the deadline to hand over all those documents. And so White Coat filed a federal lawsuit in a district court. We really do need some real good investigation work now in the US. We need that presidential commission. We need the ENC committee to step up with subpoena power to get Peter Daszak, the head of EcoHealth, to answer some hard questions. The NIH needs to come clean. This lawsuit is a good chance to get that to get that forthcoming information from them. They haven't been forthcoming with. They need to come clean now. We need an audit of all the money we're spending in China.
And now that it's emerged, he funded a laboratory that may have sparked this pandemic. There is no investigation at all. And is the White House concerned about any of this?
Mr. President, you saw confidence in Dr. Fauci?
Yes, I'm very confident in Dr. Fauci.
Since you mentioned Dr. Fauci again, can you imagine any circumstance where President Biden would ever fire him?
No.
There is no accountability here from an administration that promised more transparency.